Hi everyone, welcome back. So in this video, we will discuss about timers and the time management in the Linux kernel. So let's get started. These are the contents that we will be discussing in this video. So we will discuss how kernel sees the time and what is the tick rate, what is GFIS as we have discussed, as we have a little bit discussed about GFIS in the last video. And then we will discuss about uh, interrupt timer interrupt handlers and how the kernel maintains the time of the day. So passing of time is important to kernel because many things depends on the time in the kernel. So here we can see that uh, kernel is uh, balancing the scheduler run queues periodically on a specific time. Similarly, it has to refresh the screen of a system at a periodic times. There are two kind of time. First one is absolute time. That means it is the exact time, like the system uptime. This is the time uh, the system is up after the booting. So this is the exact time. Similarly, we have time of the day. So here we have to tell the date. Sorry, I have written the data. So date and time of a particular day. So this is absolute time. And there is concept of relative time. So many of the events happens in the kernel in some uh, time in the future, like the disk IO. So they does not depend on absolute time. They just see the some time in the future. And we have two type of timers in the kernel. So the system timers is the hardware timer. So after a specific time, it generates some signals. Based on that signals, it generates interrupts, and we process those interrupts with the help of interrupt handlers, and we update the system uptime and perform some periodic task on each timer tick. So system timers, we have dynamic timers, but these are generated with the kernel code and they are not hardware specific. So like if after some time, uh, like hard drive is attached to a system, so its motor will be running continuously. So if there is no some activity on hard drive for some time, then based on that we can stop the running of the motor. So the system timer is the hardware and it generates some electronic signals uh, on a particular period of time. So this is kind of a time source, electronic time source, like digital clock and frequency of the processor. So these are the frequency of this system timer is pre-programmed. So we call it as the number of times a timer goes off in a second. We tell it as the tick rate. And whenever this system timers goes off, every time it will generate an interrupt, and it will be handled by the timer interrupt handlers. So tick is the time between two consecutive timer interrupts. So like this is the tick rate, means number of ticks per second. So we can tell the tick is just 1 by tick rate seconds. So tick is the time in seconds, but tick rate is the number of ticks per second. And this system timer tries to update the wall time. Wall time means the time of the day and the system uptime. So let's discuss the timer interrupts. So timer interrupts play a very important role in the time management in the operating system. So with time, there are many functions in the kernel which lives and die. So let's see what these timer interrupts does. So you can see that on each timer interrupt, kernel updates the system uptime. It updates the time of the day, and on SMP systems, it balances the run queues uh, specific for schedulers, and it also runs many of the dynamic timers that have been already expired, and update the resource uses by the processor. So let's see what is tick rate. So this tick rate is defined at the boot time with the help of this static preprocessor HZ. So it is already defined at the boot time, and this value is defined in this file. So there is a specific tick rate for different kind of architectures. Uh, so based on this tick rate, we can calculate the period of the time system timer or the tick. So for x86 it's 100, and for alpha it is 1024, and this is the default value for x86. So let's discuss what is the ideal value for HZ. Uh, so increasing the tick rate means timer interrupts run more frequently, because it is inversely proportional to the tick rate. So when we run timer interrupts more frequently, then it increases the resolution or correctness. So let's discuss what are the advantages of larger tick rate. So kernel timers execute with finer resolution and increases the accuracy. And they also improve the precision of system calls like poll and select. So these system calls, poll and selects, uh, they wait for an specific file descriptor to do some IO work. So this poll system call wait on a specific file descriptor, but select uh, checks different multiple file descriptors to do the IO on that. And it will also ensure that we have uh, accurate system uptime calculation, and it will also ensure that process preemption is happening more accurately. Uh, so ultimately, it will reduce the scheduling latency. But we have to take care that the average error in this case is the half of the time period of the timer interrupt. So when we have large tick rate, then we will have the more time wasted by the timer interrupt. So let's discuss the disadvantages of larger tick rate. So it will be using the time of the processor mostly to process the timer interrupts, because timer interrupts will be occurring very frequently. So the processor will have less time to do some useful task other than the timer interrupts. And here, when this timer interrupt will uh, cause the rescheduling of the processes multiple times. So in that case, there will be uh, more processor cache thrashing, because uh, frequently we have to update the processor cache, because we have to load the timer handler. And when we do these tasks very frequently, so it will lead to more power consumption of the system. So let's discuss what is GFEEs. So GFEEs is a global variable that holds the number of ticks that have occurred since the system is booted. So in the other words, we can say that it is the variable that stores how many timer interrupts have been occurred in the system since the system was booted. So when system boots, at that time we initialize that variable to 0, and on each timer interrupt it will increase by 1. So GFees is this as the tick rate is GFees per second. To calculate the system uptime, we can do GFees upon tick rate and it will give the value in seconds. So the GFees is defined as external unsigned long volatile. So here you can see that this specific data type volatile will always tell the compiler that whenever we are accessing the variable GFees, it has to access from its memory location, so that always we can get the updated value of GFees variable. And there are functions to communicate this text to second because we need them in the user space. So let's discuss the representation of GFees. So this GFees is a specific variable for 32-bit systems. So if the tick rate like for x86 is 100 and we are using 32-bit GFees, then it will overflow after 497 days. And when we are using the tick rate 1000, so it will overflow after 49.7 days. So we need more larger GFees variable in the size so that it does not overflow more frequently when system is running continuously up for longer time. So for that purpose, in the 64-bit systems, we have GFees underscore 64 GFees variable. This 64-bit GFees variable also supports the 32-bit GFees variable. So let's see the representation here. So this is the 64-bit GFees variable, but the last bits 0 to 31 supports the 32-bit machines GFees variable. So as we have just mentioned that GFees overflows, that means it wraparounds, means when the maximum value of GFees that they can store reaches, after that it will again initialize to 0 and it will again increment on each timer tick. So we have different macros to compare the timer tick and to know when and to handle the wraparound in the GFees variable. So here we have 4 macros. So like time after, it takes this unknown variable is generally GFees. So it checks if this specified time, known time with this GFees. If this GFees variable's time is before after this known time, then it will return true. Similarly, if the GFees time is before the known time, then it will return true. And in these two cases, it will check if the GFees time and the known time is equal to each other, before or after. So let's discuss how we can handle the GFees wraparound case. So this is a simple example. So here you can assume that GFees has just wrap around. So this timeout will be very less. And then when we reach to this condition, then GFees may be incremented to very large value. So here we will see that our GFees value is more than the timeout. So we will wrongly enter into this particular case and we will not go into this case. So for this solution, we have the replacement of this function time before here in case of this simple condition. So when we use different values for GFees, then we can say that it will run to this condition more accurately. So like when we take multiple values, then it will check. So like in the previous case, the GFees has the less value, so the timeout will be less, and then GFees count will be incremented. So here it will check if the GFees value is before the timeout. So in this case, we will see that the GFees value is not before the timeout. So we will correctly go into the second section. So this tick rate is specific for kernel space. So we have to export this value to user space with the help of this variable user underscore hz. So these are the two functions for 32-bit and for 62-bit to convert this tick rate value to this user underscore hz tick rate value. Let's now discuss the uh, hardware timers or clocks. So we have already discussed about system timer. Let's now discuss about real-time clock. So this is the clock that maintains the time of the system, even though when the system is down. So it contains a separate battery and this CMOS uh, memory, which contains which stores the BIOS system, and it stores the value of wall time, or which is stored in this variable x time. So this value is set with the help of this RTC on the boot. Let's now discuss the timer interrupt handler. So when timer interrupt occurs, then that timer interrupt is handled by the timer interrupt handler. So as we have discussed in the interrupt video, that interrupts handling is divided into two parts. So here also we are handling the timer interrupt in the two parts. First one is architecture dependent, second one is architecture independent. So this architecture dependent routine is interrupt handler, and its job is specified with the help of the particular architecture. But these are the tasks the most of the architecture does. So first it takes the x time log to protect the this GFees underscore 64 variable, and the wall time that is stored into the this variable x time variable. Also it acknowledges and reset the system timer as required, and it also periodically saves the updated wall time to the real time clock, because at the boot time this real time clock will set this x time variable to get the wall time, and then this interrupt handler will run this tick periodic routine, that is interrupt independent routine. So let's move to the architecture independent routine of timer interrupt. So here it increments the GFees value by 1 on this call of this tick periodic routine, and it will also update the resources used by the system, like such as the consumed system user time for a particular running process. And it will also run the dynamic timers that have already expired, and it will also call this function scheduler tick, and it will update the wall time with the help of this x time variable, and it will also calculate the average load of the system. So this is the code for tick periodic routine, that is architecture independent. So here you can see that here this is the important function call. So do timer tries to update the GFees variable. So in this section you can observe that first we are taking logs, because after taking logs, then only we have to update these the GFees value. And this function also calculates the system load. And then we run this function update wall time to update the time of the day. And when this all these are done, then we try to update the process times, and then we do the CPU profiling from this profile tick function. So let's discuss what this do underscore timer does. So here we are passing one. So that means every time we call this function, we are incrementing the GFIS value by 1. So this is the do timer function. So here you can see that we are incrementing this GFIS variable and we are calculating the global load of the system. And let's now move to this function, update the process times. So here you can see that we are accounting the process tick. So we are updating the time related to the processes, and then we are running some local timers if required, and we are rescheduling some clock IRQs, and we are doing some other tasks. So let's see what is this the time of the day. So as we have already discussed that the wall time is stored into this X time variable. So this X time variable is of type structure time spec. So here is the this time spec structure. So here it contains two variables. So this variable contains the time in the seconds, and this variable contains the time in nanosecond. And as we have already discussed that this accessing or writing this variable, we need this sequential log, X time log. And these are the two interfaces, user space interfaces, to update or date the time of the day. And these interfaces are implemented with the help of the system calls. So kernel does not do much with the time of the day, but there is one case like file system code use this time of the day to update the timestamps on the inodes to a specific file depending on what we have done with the file, like accessed, modified, or something else. So let's discuss the software timers. So timers, we can call them the dynamic timers or kernel timers. So they are essential for managing the flow of the time in the kernel. So to use the timer, we have to follow some sequence. So first we have to define the timer variable, and then we have to initiate it with this function init underscore timer. After that, we have to assign the values or the function that we have to run when this timer expires. So here in this section, we will assign those values, and we will discuss about it in the coming slide when we will discuss schedule timeout function. After these values are assigned to the timer, then we can add the timer, and after this timer expires, this particular work will happen, and then we can delete the timer. So there is no limit to run the number of timers because these are created by the kernel. So we don't have any limitation on it. So timers are represented with the help of this structure timer underscore list. So here you can see that this has the variable expire. So like I said here, we have to assign the values to timer member variables. So here we have to assign the value to expire, and we have to assign the function that we want to run when the timer expires and the flex that we want to set. So like we can define our function like my underscore timer underscore function. This is just a name, you can give any name. And this is the function to add a specific timer. So it will be deactivated, but it will be continuously running, and it will activate this timer only when it expires. So when some timer is initialized and it is active, so we can delete with the help of this delete timer function. So it will delete the specific timer variable, but in the SMP system there can be having a timer handler, and they can be running on different processors. So for that purpose, to ensure that the timer variable is completely deleted, we have to run delete underscore timer underscore sync function. So it ensures that this timer variable is deleted from the every processor. So we should never try to substitute this module timer function. So let me first tell you what is this modified timer function. So when we have initialized a timer and it is in the inactive state, so if we want to uh, change the expires value of that particular timer, then we can run this function. So it will set the new expire time for the particular timer, and it will activate that particular uh, timer variable. So we should not replace this timer function something like delete timer and set the expire separately, and then we can add the timer. So this is not correct. And we should always use delete timer sync. So it is safe for multiprocessing system as well as for uniprocessor system. And we have to protect any shared data between timer handlers with the help of using locks, as we have already discussed in the video of synchronization in the kernel. So let's see how we implement the timer. So timers are executed in bottom hop context, such as soft IRQs after the timer interrupt completes. So timer interrupt handler runs this update process times as we have discussed. So it calls this run local timers. So this run local timers function will schedule all the soft IRQs waiting on this particular soft IRQ timer underscore soft IRQ, and those timers will be processed, and kernel saves these timers in the 5 groups, and depending on their expiry value they can change their group in respective manner. Sometimes in the kernel we need to delay the task for a specific period of time. So we have multiple mechanisms to do that. So like we have busy looping. So we are using these delays without using the timers or bottom half mechanism. So we can use busy loop. So here we are busy looping, but we are allowing scheduler to schedule if some task is waiting to schedule. So we are checking if the GP is before this particular delay. Uh, Till then it will wait. When this delay, when GP passes this delay, we can continuously check if we need conditional reschedule, then we can reschedule. So as in the code it is mentioned that we can, this function will invoke the scheduler to schedule some other process. So we can't use this looping delaying method into the interrupt context. So we have to use it only in the process context. But we should not use this looping method because it tries to uh, engage the CPU in busy looping. So that is not a good idea. So kernel provides some methods by which we can delay in very small time. So we can't use GFES because the time period of GFES can be very large and it may not be accurate. So we have this micro delay function. So we can specify how many micro times uh, we want to delay, and these functions are implemented with the help of the for loop or while loop, because they know how many loops they has to run to spend this much amount of time. And these uh, micro delay, or sorry, milli delay, are implemented with the help of these micro delays. And another method is the schedule timeout function. So like we have discussed in the scheduling of the process video, that we can run this schedule function to schedule a new process. So uh, in that schedule call, it will check if process has got the signal or the event has occurred, then it will be scheduled. But in this function schedule underscore timeout, it will check all three things. It will check if the process has got the event, or if the process has got the signal, or the process has elapsed a particular time, so it can schedule a particular process. So let's check the code of schedule timeout. So here you can see that if we are having the time max schedule timeout, then we can directly schedule. Else we can return. So here you can see that we are setting the expire of the timer. So we are defining here the timer, and then we are initializing the timer, and then we are updating the different member variables of a timer structure. So here we are setting the expire variable, we are setting the data, and then we are specifying the function that will run when this timer expires. And then here we are activating the timer. So after this time elapsed, we will run this schedule function. So it will schedule some other process into the processor, and then we are deleting the timer. So when we are sleeping on a wait queue with a timeout, we should run this schedule underscore timeout instead of schedule function, so that after the particular timeout, the process can wake up from the wait queue and it can be scheduled. So here, as we have already discussed, it will check if the signal has occurred or the time has elapsed, so it will be scheduled. So this is the conclusion that we have discussed in this video. So you can say that we have understood the concept of time in the kernel, and we have seen what is the wall time and the system uptime, and we have understood how timer interrupt happens and how we handle those timer interrupts with the help of timer interrupt handlers. We have discussed about timer ticks and this tick rate and the fees variable, that is a global variable. And we have seen the implementation of timers and the interfaces available to use this timers in the kernel. So this is all for this video. I will see you in the next video.